Is it possible to always be happy no matter what, regardless of the situation or circumstance? Is it possible to always be in a constant state of unwavering happiness no matter what is happening? Whenever there's talk of unconditional happiness, there will often be those who raise some objection. They'll say, what about when circumstances are particularly unpleasant or painful or difficult? What about if someone close to you passes away? What if you lose your job or your home? What if you become painfully ill or injured? What if you find yourself in the middle of a war zone? What if you're being beaten and tortured? Are you supposed to just smile and be happy? And I think there's some really good points here. Even when the example might be something extreme, something that isn't likely to happen to you, it's still a possibility. And certainly, we all encounter difficulties throughout our lives. So the question is, can you expect to be happy even during very stressful and painful circumstances? Now, there may be those who argue that it is indeed possible. But whether or not that's true, I really don't think it's reasonable to have that kind of expectation. What's more important is being true to one's current condition, being honest and authentic in regard to what you're experiencing in the moment, including whatever you may be feeling. And not to think that you should be feeling something other than what you're feeling at that moment. Not to deny what you're feeling, or to try and force a feeling that doesn't come naturally. For a while, I had this idea that the mark of spiritual progress was happiness. And so anytime I wasn't feeling happy, I would think I must be doing something wrong. And that thought would cause me to feel even worse. There would be a lot of judgment in that thought, a lot of condemnation, that I'm not living up to the ideal. And so I might even feel ashamed of it. But later on, I came to realize that spirituality has much less to do with being happy and much more to do with being honest and authentic. It's about being present with whatever is occurring in the moment, which may include unpleasant experiences and emotions. It has much more to do with accepting the fact that there are going to be difficulties in life, and that sometimes we're going to feel upset about it. And interestingly, the more that we come to accept this, the less we suffer. So much of our suffering is due to having unrealistic expectations and desires, wanting things to always happen in a certain way, being attached to a particular outcome, the expectations we have of other people, or the expectations that we have of ourselves, like the idea that we should always feel happy no matter what's going on. I don't think that it's reasonable to imagine that we'll always be happy regardless of the circumstances. It may be possible, but I'm not talking about whether or not it's possible. I'm talking about whether or not it's a reasonable expectation. I'm talking about acknowledging where we are currently and recognizing that in our current condition, it's entirely reasonable that we're going to be disturbed by things that happen in life. The question is, how disturbed? What I've observed is that a great deal of our unhappiness is not due to particularly difficult situations, but generally it's due to our overall dissatisfaction with ordinary, uneventful moments. Most of our life consists of these ordinary, uneventful moments. And much of our unhappiness is due to taking so many things for granted, not appreciating what we have, not appreciating the simple things in life. Or it may be that a great deal of our unhappiness is due to ruminating over things from the past, or worrying about difficulties which might arise in the future, neither of which have any reality at all here in the present moment. But even when it does come to facing difficulties in life, when there is in fact something unpleasant happening in the present moment, it's often our thoughts in regard to it, our judgments, our interpretations, our resistance, that causes so much of our suffering in the moment. When some unfortunate situation occurs, it may be reasonable to feel upset about it. But how upset we feel, and for how long, all depends a great deal on what we think. Quite commonly, what we do is catastrophize. When something unfortunate happens, we tend to exaggerate how terrible it is. If you lose your job or your partner, or if you fail at achieving something, you might feel as if your entire world is falling apart. You might feel as if your life is over and that there's no reason to go on. We can sometimes be very dramatic, but these kinds of thoughts tend not to be true. A more realistic approach might be to say things are going to be different from now on. It may even be a bit challenging, and I'm going to have to adjust to this change. I'm going to have to let go and move on, or try again, or change my approach and try something different. And not that you necessarily have to do any of that immediately. Depending on the situation, you may need a little time to grieve, to rest and recover, to collect yourself, or whatever it is that you need to do in the moment. But even within that grief or sorrow or frustration, you can remind yourself, I'm going to get through this. It's not the end of the world. Difficulties are a part of life. There are going to be difficulties. There are going to be losses. There are going to be things that happen that go against our wishes. And we suffer less the more we accept this. So it is possible to be much happier than we commonly tend to be, and to be happy more often than we tend to be. But we don't need to expect or imagine that we'll always be happy in every situation, no matter what is happening. One of the problems that we create in our desire to always be happy is that we don't take time to properly process our unpleasant emotions. We tend to be in a rush to get rid of them. And so we might repress them or push them away or distract ourselves with some pleasurable activity. But if we can learn to process our emotions in a healthy way, we can resolve them much more quickly and easily. And they tend not to show up so frequently or to stick around for as long. And I've talked about how to do this in other videos, so I won't go into it here. But our notions of happiness are often part of the problem, including any sort of idea that we should always be happy. Perhaps one of the issues is that there are many spiritual teachers who talk about a kind of unconditional, causeless happiness. But I don't think they're talking about happiness in the way that we commonly understand it. Most of us think of happiness as a feeling of elation or exuberance or excitement that we tend to experience during moments of pleasure, or when some desire is fulfilled, or when we're relieved of some painful or unpleasant situation, all of which are conditions. But what these teachers are really talking about might be better referred to as contentment or inner peace or equanimity. But even to be content and at peace all the time is not a reasonable thing to expect. And we can certainly work toward that. We can at least work toward reducing our suffering. But in the meantime, it's okay to not feel happy all the time. It's okay to feel upset now and then. It's okay to feel sad, to feel angry, to feel scared, to feel whatever you happen to feel. It's okay to feel. But just don't get stuck in the feeling. Don't get so absorbed in one unpleasant aspect of life that you lose sight of all that is good and pleasant and fortunate. Take time to appreciate what you have and learn to enjoy the simple things in life, and you will be much happier. Maybe not all the time, but certainly more often.